Monday Special. The hashtag is Monday Special KE on Twitter. We'll have some of your feedback a little later on. And we're discussing this wave of arson attacks, especially caused by students in their schools. A quick snapshot shows us that in the past 18 months, 127 schools were torched, according to a police report. It started rapidly in Narok County, peaking in the second term. And the first term is there's usually barely any incidents. It seems that the pattern is in second term. That's when we see a lot of these incidents take place. So we'll go into that in just a moment. But first, let me introduce you to my panelists. We'll start across from me. We have Emmy Wanyama, who is an educationist. He's also a former principal of a high school. Maybe he'll give us some insight into his experience in that. Then we have Faith Nyaga, who's an actuary. And then finally, right next to me, we have Stephen Mushusha, who is in Kenyatta University. He is a student. Thank you all so much for coming on the show. Maybe I can start with the two of you, Faith and Stephen. What exactly, in your view, because you were both in schools previously that had incidents of strikes, and in your case, arson. So maybe I can start with you, and you can give me some idea as to why that is one way of students addressing their grievances. Why are we seeing a lot of these arson attacks in schools taking place, based on your experience from being a student?
Okay, for me, I would say there's no good student-teacher relationship. You'll find that when a student wants to view his or her grievances, it will be so difficult for him or her to reach the teacher.
Yeah.
When they go through the student council, it will be tricky for them to.
Right. But is it so bad, Stephen, that people resort to arson attacks? Is the frustration that deep-seated?
It's so deep because the students, they have no one to turn to. When they go to the parents will be like, it's just a normal thing, we'll pass it. You know? But when they go to also to the teachers will be like, not everyone is, you're alone with that problem. You know? So, and apparently it's a big problem with many people, but you'll find that they won't understand you. Okay, before I move on to Faith, in your case, whether or not you mentioned the school, this was back in 2012, you were telling me. Yeah. There was an arson attack that actually left three students dead. Yeah. Could you take us into what were some of the reasons behind that? Are they the reasons you've mentioned? People being frustrated, people feeling like their voices were not being heard? Those are some of the reasons. Others were the school, the principal, he never allowed the students to have much entertainment, if I may term it. Okay. Also, the separation of the Form 1s, Form 2s, the students wanted they come together so they can socialize. And the school administration, that is the principal and the deputy, they were against it. Yeah. So the students had to go on a strike. Yeah. And three people died. How did that affect you personally after that? For me, it was a traumatizing time because actually I just joined that school from class 8. I was in Form 1. So for me to experience such a thing, and I was looking forward to join secondary school, thinking that it's such a nice place. Yeah. You'll meet friendly people, you'll be cancelled by teachers and stuff. Then, to your shock, you get some things like the strikes. So for me it was it was traumatizing. Yeah. We'll come back later and ask you your thoughts on perhaps what could be done to nip this in the bud. And Faith, in your case, was it similar? The frustrations that Stephen has mentioned, were those some of the reasons why there were strikes in the school you attended? Yes, those were some of them. But also we had a different principal, and we were given without even notice, and we didn't like her. So we ganged up to the teachers, and the teachers also were not for the principal, so the teachers supported us. They told us, you go ahead, you have our support. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Again, Stephen, was that the case? Teachers sometimes being in support of the arson attacks, the strikes? That's very true. Yeah, you'll find some teachers, they gang up together with the students. They're against maybe a principal or a deputy principal. They want him or her to get out of the school. And the only way, because maybe the principal is so much commanding, if I might say, and they want the deputy to go. So they'll gang with the students, they organize a strike, and what do you remember about that time? I know when we spoke earlier, it was many years ago. What do you remember being the atmosphere of that strike? Was there a lot of anger after the strike? Did you feel like you achieved what you had hoped to? We had the first, but it didn't work out because the principal was around, and he had some of the snitch who went and said
So we later gave them a few, like a week.
Was the snitch a student or a teacher?
A student.
Yeah.
Some of those CU.
Okay.
So we waited for them to first settle down, and then after like a week, we now ganged up. We became a big group because now people were, they had the morale, and other schools were now striking. So they decided, okay, we were among them. We decided, let's go. They were beaten. Those snitch, the CU, they were beaten, and the teachers gave us the way. They allowed us to go out. They told us the way, the route. Everything was actually prepared by the teachers. For us, it was just to walk out.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did that ever come to light afterwards? I'm sure parents were concerned and asking what's going on. Did it ever emerge that there was that collaboration between students and teachers?
When we were coming back, the teachers, the same teachers who allowed us to go are the same teachers who were interrogating us.
Wow.
So you cannot even go and report this is the same teacher. So you just swallow the bitter truth, and that is how it happened. So later, even if we striked, they gave us an year, but they only handled one issue.
Yeah.
Then the rest, they just let it settle.
Okay. Before we hear from Emmy, looking back now, because like I said, this was many years ago for you, almost 7 or so years ago. Do you still feel like that was the right thing to do? Is there a part of you that feels like we could have handled our frustrations differently?
Somehow yes, and somehow no. Reason being that even if we demonstrated, we had the right, because some of the issues are not sorted out. We used to complain about the work and the punishment that we used to be given. We were being told to cut grass 1 centimeter long, and that was even torture. Sometimes you're forced to cook in the kitchen, and that's not your work. You're supposed to read. So when we complain, and the person you're complaining to does not hear, you choose another alternative, a voice that will be heard. And some of those they were heard, but some of them weren't.
They were not heard.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Emmy, let me bring you in as an educationist. You're also a former principal. Are you hearing sentiments that are similar to you when you were a principal in a high school?
Yes, sometimes, yes, Janet. What we see here is that we have had a lot of strikes. And unfortunately, Maseno School has actually that an unavoidable record. The last century, they were the first school actually to go on strike in Kenya. But we've seen that go all through. In 1974, President Kenyatta actually banning strikes in schools because it also became a crisis. We've seen it come. I think you talked about the last weekend alone, 12 schools rest down. Today, 8 schools. This is nothing new.
Oh, I'm even getting information that there's currently Saint Immaculate in Kitale is currently on fire as we speak, and I think we'll be running some images in the course of the interview, different incidents of schools burning. Please carry on.
And look at between June and July 2008, we had one of the highest rates of school unrest, actually 300. And all that the then minister did, Professor Samongeri, said, you know what, we're going to deal with this, we're going to be tough, we're going to be rough. And he actually asked the principals to present the names of the students who were involved in the strikes to the police. Now, what we need to realize here is that we're not learning so much. And the cause of the strikes at that particular time, a ministerial committee was set up, a subcommittee of parliament, I think. We had also the University of Nairobi Kikuyu campus, a team led by Juan Chelotti, who did quite some good work that was published internationally on the school unrest. And the issues we saw here, one is the diet, the other one is the style of management, the other one was infrastructure, the other, apart from the other one, was the issue of communication. How do we communicate right across? Now, we need to realize that the student that is in school today is not the student that was there in the 80s or the 70s. That student has actually changed.
What kind of student do we have in schools today?
We have one that is extremely well informed, one that is easily reachable, and one that believes that he can actually chart his course of action. Now, the student we have now, the role models of that student are not what we saw in the past. They're not they're not Bill Gates of this world or something. It's Lionel Messi, it's Victor Wanyama. Those are their stars. And there's nothing wrong with that. But how do we connect? Look at, when you have a school principal, for example, how does he connect with the children? We have seen today one of the biggest challenges is the structure of the schools. You've got the schools, which is the smallest entity of education under the Ministry of Education. We can say that the school is owned by the ministry. But today, we made the Teacher Service Commission independent, and you've got a principal there who has, I mean, the CS can go to the school, say as much as he can, threaten you, but you know he can't sack you, can't do much to you. You are not his employee. You're actually hired by the Teacher Service Commission.
And what in your view is wrong with that picture?
With that picture is that the CS has got a good gun, but no bullets whatsoever. Then you have got the stakeholders, who are the parents, whom we could say that have more control on the children. But the parents also are not having the time with the children. And because of that, therefore, we are working at cross purposes.
Wow.
Now, it's very important to know that today, for example, the Teacher Service Commission can rise up, transfer a teacher. They don't have to inform the ministry. They don't even have to inform the board. And the parents have no idea of what has actually happened.
Right.
So it's very important that all these groups are brought together to be able to actually see the way forward and actually arrive at the causes of
And I'll come to that, because there were task forces previously set up in the previous regimes, I would say, under President Moi's rule and President Mwai Kibaki. There were task forces, I believe, that were set up to address these issues, but nothing was implemented. I believe CS Matiang'i, that's one of his frustrations. We'll come to that in a moment. Is there anything that Emmy is saying that's resonating with you? Because I think the word that keeps coming up is disconnect, because he's mentioned there's a disconnect even within the education, fraternity, but also with parents. How much of a role for you, Faith and Stephen, are parents, I don't want to say to blame, but in terms of, let me just use the word to blame, for the unrest that we're seeing in schools? Is there a real disconnect between students and their parents that's making them so frustrated that they have to vent their frustrations in this manner? Any one of you?
Okay, for me, I would say everyone has failed, from the parents to the teacher to the student. Reason, when you go home, the parent is not there. So you venture out with other students. You get to you live a life that is not yours. When you're coming back to school, you expect the same life now to venture in, because the people you've interacted with them outside, they are now in school. The same, you're still hyper. So you expect that same environment. And now the principal comes in, or the teachers comes and tries to cut it short. And the way they are trying to cut it short, it's not in a way that we are both in good terms. So in a way you tend to feel, now that you're in a cocoon that you need to grow.
Okay. So
in the process of you trying to grow, you try and gather so many people, and then you tell them, this thing is not working for me, and this other person says, this is not working for me. So what is the best option? Let's start a strike. So the same person starts a strike, this school starts a strike, and then it goes within a district, a county, and then when it goes, this school has started a strike, this other one hasn't. So out of peer pressure, you fear people will demoralize you, will be rejected.
So peer pressure is also a huge issue.
Yes.
Yeah.
A big issue.
And that's why we get the copycat crimes, as they're being called. Maybe just similar to what Faith has said, is there a way that the administration and parents can communicate to students to make them feel as if they're being heard? Because it sounds like they come with a very authoritative way of talking to you, demanding change. They don't really want to listen. They don't really even understand what you're processing, and so they force it upon you. If we were to see some change with the way the administration addresses students, what kind of narrative would that take? How would you want to see them communicate so that you feel like you're heard, so that students feel like they're heard?
For me, I will say the relationship between the students and the teachers and the family and the parents also, it should be good. One, in school, let's introduce something like forums. Like forums. Let's not rely on the student council, the prefects, because these people, the prefects, the student council, they're the ones who are given privileges. They'll be much, let me say, higher.
So the forums should include
everyone.
Everyone. Okay.
Everyone. Every student, that one can have his or her views heard.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Maybe you can respond to that, and also respond, Emmy, to what seems to be a wave that is on an all-time high, almost like a rampage where people are really concerned because we're seeing the numbers, if we're talking about a school, even currently on fire. Maybe some insight into why you think that's the case. Why are we seeing it seemingly at an all-time high?
I think one of the things that we've said clearly here, do we actually understand our children as parents in the first place?
Yeah.
I think that's a big challenge. Now, you have got a challenge here. You've got a parent that doesn't understand the kid, and a teacher that doesn't understand the kid. Now, there were days when we were in school, when teachers came to school to teach. They never came to work. But today you have a teacher who comes to school for a job. I asked my sons, why do they like President Kenyatta? They say the guy is cool. He gets into a school and quickly connects with the kids. And that's what we're actually missing. From my experience, for example, once you're dealing with teenagers, they're always up to something, either positive or good or bad. And a key one, for example, as a principal, is when the kids will always have a nickname for me. But I have a choice to either get annoyed or have fun with them. But I will wait that on the next Monday I'm on assembly, actually talk about it, and they'll burst out laughing and they say, no, he's one of us. Then they look for another one, and you keep moving on. But what do I say here? We are having a case whereby you're having a parent that is challenged. Now, the three things here: if you want to destroy a society or a country, you destroy their role models. In this case, for example, the teachers. We've seen the teachers picketing. The teachers have also learned that unless they can throw stones and do what, nobody will ever listen to them. It's the narrative we need to change in this country to know that negotiation is not a position of weakness. It's actually a position of strength. Then number two, you destroy the family. We are seeing the family is falling apart. And then lastly, after you destroy the family, you've destroyed the role models, the family, and then the education system. Now the challenge that you have here is, for example, if you go to, and it's not just actually even in the schools, even in the churches, we are having issues trying to keep up with the children. Now, you need to realize, for example, in one of the schools where I'm a parent, we put up a counseling office. And we discovered, with a professional counselor full-time, not very far from here. And you know, what happened is that we discovered the demand was so high that we put it 24 hours. It runs 24 hours now. But you know, the most people waiting, even as I speak, to see the counselor, they are not the kids, they're the parents.
To see the counselor?
Waiting to see the counselor because the counselor is available.
And the students are not interested, are not... Why is that the case?
If you see the parents there more, then you can know where the problem is coming from. Let me give you an example, for example. I was sitting at a principal's office waiting to see the principal on behalf of, to know how my son is performing. Then a parent walks in for a kid that actually been suspended. And we looked at the boy, you know, as parents we are sitting. The kid had that hairstyle you call a mohawk. But when the father walked in, he had even had a bigger mohawk, and we all burst out laughing because we knew where the challenge was.
The father had a bigger mohawk.
The father had a bigger mohawk. So
it's role modeling.
So it's the role modeling. Now we need to move away from coaching to actually mentoring. And mentoring is a longer process. When I was in school at Janet, there was this gentleman called Mwaniki. He was actually a teacher at Strathmore School. And he spent time driving around, listening to us, supporting us as boys who came from very far and could not even have a chance to go home or be visited. And for your information, he was Opus Dei. And I'm not saying that it's time we left the Opus Dei to run for us all our education systems. But there were values, that they inculcated in us about being responsible, being hardworking, and just making the right choices.
Just a very quick one before we take a look at some tweets. There's been something here mentioned. I don't know if you're in a position, obviously, to answer this, but they've mentioned teachers being in cahoots with students when it comes to strikes and arson attacks. That's very troubling. I mean, how do you even then begin to address it if the same teachers are doing it in conjunction with the students and then turning around on them and interrogating them later? That describes a lot of rot then in the system.
You're right. One of the things that we need to realize that majority of the teachers today, if you look at the different categories of the worker we have, right from veterans to what we call the millennials, the teachers that were born after the 80s, you will look at their level, and this is the same trouble you're having with the U.S. Civil Service. They're wondering, how do we maintain these people? Because one thing, they are restless. They are working, yes, but they are restless. They're under so many pressures. They actually want to leave the system. Now, look, if you look at the society models that we actually celebrating, we are told this guy was a businessman, he was a millionaire, he was this and that, yet we never saw any business he was doing. And this are the pressure these kids are actually going through. Now, let me point out something. It's very important to realize that when you bring in a principal who is not accepted and is not connecting with the teachers will actually resist him. And because of the power that has been vested in the principal, and yet the role of the principal has changed. Today you expect that principal to be an accounting officer because we are sending the capitation to him. We also say, apart from sending capitation to him, we expect him to have negotiation skills. We are also expecting him to be good at conflict resolution. Let me give you an example.
Very briefly, so that we can move along. We're doing badly with time.
When Professor Mugenda took over Jomo Kenyatta University, she went back to school to get an MBA and look at what she has actually done. We are giving the principal a big role without the skills, no management skills, and after teaching biology and chemistry, we make him a principal.
That's a very valid point. We want to take a look at some tweets before we go back to Faith and Steve very quickly. Let's see if we can bring those up and see what some of you are saying on Twitter. We start with Oli Sagu says, student leaders are also failing. They should bridge the gap between students and the school administration. Muse, I think that's what it is. Management. This is a new big problem in Kenya, and not only in schools. John Karanja 254 says, a culture where anybody can get away with anything is the reason why students don't fear burning schools. Okay, then we have the fear of no visiting day and half term. That's a longer second term. This is what students want to avoid. We now have to go to winding comments, and let's hear from you, Faith. You've seen some of the tweets people are saying. They're talking about the pressures in school right now, longer terms, not enough visiting days. As what Emmy has said, a disconnect between the administration and the students. Do you think this is what could be making the incidents seem a lot worse? I mean, now you can look back, but even just looking around you, you probably have maybe friends or cousins in high schools. Do you think we're at a point where we can't go back and fix it, or is there a way to fix this?
It can be fixed. One way is let there be unity between parents and teachers. This thing of parents coming and commanding the teachers or reprimanding them in front of the student when the student is listening, now the student loses respect for the teacher.
That happens a lot, huh?
Yeah. And the same teacher now goes back to class and teaches the same student. How the student looks at the teacher is not different, considering how they talked. The principal themselves also do the same to the teachers. So the image that the student has is, this teacher cannot do anything to me. So it's either I do this or do this. So the only way is for the teacher to work now with the student. The teachers have found a way to work with the student more than the principal. And that is why it is now the teachers are taking over. Yeah. So for me, I would prefer let there be unity. Let them sit down and let the government also take part of it.
Yeah. Yes. And respect as well, from what you've mentioned. Thank you for that, Faith. Your thoughts, Stephen, on how we can manage this, especially now that we're seeing so many incidents happen almost every week.
For me, I will second what Faith has said. First and foremost, there be a good relationship between the students and the teachers, and also the parents. The society also has a part to play, because for one, you can't see a teacher striking, burning tires on the road, then the next minute he or she is there teaching you, telling you that you're supposed to do this and this and this. You know, you'll have a negative picture about that teacher. So the best thing is there be negotiation and there be good relationship between the student and the teachers.
All right, thank you for that. Emmy, very quickly as we wind up, do you think valid points, but can it fix the problem, or is there still so much more to be done?
I think we've had a structure failure right from the parents. Today the kid is actually raised up by the media, by Facebook, by the house girl, and by Ezekiel Mutua. So the parent has actually abdicated they're actually wrong. Then number two is that you need to realize that here we're having a challenge. We have the schools located in the counties. We don't, like for example the schools that have been raised down, everybody asking county government help us. We need to realize that the county government is also a stakeholder in the schools. And then number three is that we need transformative leadership, whereby you sit with the stakeholders, in this case the major stakeholders, the students, discuss with them, come up with where you want to go.
Involve them.
Yes, because the kids are also keen about, they're worried about the infrastructure, their poor performance. Then after you do that, then you become a sponsor or a facilitator to that particular change. That way they'll feel like it was part of them and they'll actually make it.
All right.
So I see that that's a key one. And then the last one is this. The school term has been lengthened, for example. The head teachers have gone in to take loans to buy buses and what have you. Every time the fees comes to their account, the banks take their share first. The teacher has a problem. How am I going to take care of the debt? How am I going to fix this and that? That becomes actually a problem. Now, what have we seen? When we say that the term is going to be longer, this last month, the kids have been sent home for over 2 weeks for midterm. You are again trying to beat the system, yet you thought you are solving a problem. So we actually need to involve all the stakeholders.
I think that's the common thing I'm hearing, and I thank you all so much for sharing your views so honestly. It's certainly a concern for Kenyans across the board, and a lot of these things start with dialogue, understanding, unity. That's very strong, and I know CS Matiang'i is meant to table a report tomorrow, so we'll be waiting to see what he'll be saying. I think there's a bit of hesitation to form another task force because there's a feeling like the other two, they were not implemented. So we wait and see what the CS is going to table tomorrow. The three of you, thank you so much for coming. We'll take a short break now. We'll be back with a bit more of your feedback before we wind up on Monday Special tonight.